Dear guests, dear colleagues, our today's event takes place in a very important moment in Lithuania, just because the working group is meeting today, and it is halfway with a new project of research assessment. So I'm sure that all the presentations will have a huge impact, and it will be in our public discourse. It will be widely discussed and taken into consideration. I myself would like to talk about our specificity. From the previous presentations, I see that we follow more or less similar tracks, so have similar experiences, but we can share good practices and good ideas and be jealous. For example, me of ETIS, Estonian ETIS, we would like to have something like that very much. Nevertheless, we have something unique also, and that is our Database Lituanistika. That's the main part of my presentation. Before that, I'd like to give some glimpses into historical background and context to explain how it appeared, how it developed, and why it is as it is. And finally, I will present my own professional linguist's views on how it should be continued and how citation analysis should be thank you. So just a little bit of historical context. I will not talk about prehistorical times, meaning the Soviet period, when there were no research evaluations whatsoever. It was floor financing for the institutions. And the real researchers were the hobbyists, those who did it for their own sake, interest, and ability. I talk about universities, not research institutes. The situation was quite different there. They did it for their salaries mostly. During the first years of independence, the controversies in research and education cropped up, and there were discussions again in the public discourse that we should take care of our research. First of all, no egalitarian financing, important topics for the state and for the nation, and gifted, capable researchers should be prioritized. There were some national attempts to evaluate research. That was Professor Vilkas in 1994, but actually it was a very short, fragmented attempt, and it ended up with the conclusion that we should invite foreigners that would tell us what to do. It was done in 1995 when the first evaluation group from Norway arrived. They did a very good job. They issued 2 thick volumes of reports and recommendations, and they are valid up to now. Some of the recommendations are even more important than at that time. But I will try to concentrate on social sciences and humanities, and from that perspective, I will tell that at that time we were already told to go international, not to be closed inside, not to publish in our local journals that were very popular at that time still, and actually to get some more global ambitions. I remember a very good example at that time that was given Ibsen and Lithuania, a topic for one dissertation. And Norwegian people asked us, look, what about if you tried to analyze Ibsen without Lithuania? So actually, the argumentation was that we should be more international and more global. That met opposition from the so-called localists, mostly from the people in the social sciences and humanities, who would try to explain that no way, we can't do it, just because our topics are very closely related to our languages, and that's true, that nobody else cares about our problems except us, and we should take care of them. And finally, that we should be evaluated in a different way. It was kind of, to put it mildly, ignored. Actually, the recommendations, they were very good, but they were not carried out. Life went its own way. But the impact was that immediately after that, there was a special checkup of the research institutes by national experts, and it was a strong drive for interdisciplinarity. The overall conclusion was that, look, if you publish inside the country, could you please look at each other, and could you please cite each other? Just because the same university, different departments, people usually don't know what they do in their own research. After a while, even a stronger request arrived. That was in 2001, a request to publish in ICI journals. And that got a very strong opposition and attempts to preserve Lithuanian language as an issue in the academic discourse for social sciences and humanities. The few years were very problematic, especially for those who wanted to defend their dissertations, because there were very few in the field in the country that could participate in the defense committees. They were privileged to sit in some 30 defenses per year, just because they were the few that had publications. After a while, there was a somewhat different demand to publish in the journals that are included into international databases. Meanwhile, sorry, that's not, meanwhile, the previous request was abolished, but the community of the social sciences and humanities, with the help of presidential appeal to the constitutional law, was again very high in the discussion, because they demanded totally different evaluation criteria for themselves. Well, I don't know any other country where the evaluation criteria would go as high as constitutional law as it went with us. And after a while, the answer came from the constitutional law, and it was favorable for social sciences and humanities. Nevertheless, in 2 years, there was another request issued by the Research Council of Lithuania of that time to publish in peer-reviewed journals, meaning national, local, Lithuanian language, but the journals have to be included into the prioritized databases. Well, what happened, we know, we remember. All the journals, most of the journals became members of the databases, and as in this fairy tale, the cross was put on every door, and this requirement lost its validity and common sense. Actually, that paved the way for the database Lituanistika, because the attempt was to start our own database that could serve as a bibliographic source and to be able to evaluate our research ourselves. There were 3 different periods for this database. It started in 2006, and at that time, the concept, the overall idea was discussed, and it was like that: trust the text. We do not care so much for the journals, and we do not make reference and citation lists for the journals, but for texts, either articles or book reviews or books, monographs, whatever, as far as they are assumed to be research. So the database has been started. In the next period, it was extended. And in the last period, where we are now, the bibliometric approach was introduced. This is the portal, how it looks like. You are mostly welcome to visit it. This is just for the view. I'd like to discuss distinctive features of the Database Lituanistika. It includes thematic research publications on the topic of Lithuanian studies or by Lithuanian authors. And it goes as far back as 2000 by now. Dissertations come from all the period of independence. It has detailed records for better search possibilities, links and references to other publications, as well as expert comments and information on evaluation score. All the research papers and books, whatever was meant for the database, was re-evaluated. And that also aroused a big dispute in public discourse whether we should do it or not. The papers have been already published in peer-reviewed journals. What are you doing? Why do we need this? Actually, we did need, because the percentage of rejected articles showed that at that time, the review process, peer review process, was not excellent. Later on, the feedback from the existence of this database was very good, and right now we are we are taking some journal publications for granted that they are good, just based on the previous specific expertise. But most of the documents that arrive in that database, they are judged by the expert group, and they are scored. Well, it's not visible for the public. What the public can see is, in a very nice way, what publications have been rejected. It's only that they were supplied, but they are not in the database. And that also has its influence also. So actually, it's almost half-half for social sciences and humanities. Generic structure, from the point of view of genres, it's mostly articles, shorter papers, although there are some other types of very specific research, like studios, like maps, like essay reviews, a special type of reviews that have a element of research in itself, and some others. From the point of view of fields of research, I hope you can see in that rather fuzzy picture, it's not well balanced, but this is what we produce. So actually it's revealing, and well, we simply take it as a state of art. What is good and what is very much appreciated in this database is the proportion of full texts and links or just bibliographic references. Actually, this could be interpreted as a huge corpus, as a huge full-text database on academic Lithuanian or academic research on Lithuanian topics, mostly Lithuanian language, but not only. The structure of the information system of the database is in front of you. It's not really very complicated. I will not overview it all. I'd like to concentrate on the bibliometric part of it. So quite a big number of documents are processed from the point of view of citations. Still, something is left to continue and it will be finished. But what I'd like to stress and to say about the part that is done for individual texts is that is done manually, that Thomson Reuters model is used for that. And that, of course, sometimes can be very tricky since it depends heavily on the accuracy of bibliographic references. Well, sometimes it's hard or even impossible to find references because people out of a sudden translate the title or adapt the name of the author or for some other reasons. It's possible to search since last year in the database for the citations, citation indexes or citation data from the point of view of author, the title, or just the source of the document. And it can be done in the site. It's possible to check for everyone. Individual citation records, H-indexes and self-citations are also provided there. And as far as I know, they are already used for promotions, for all kind of, personal impacts. So actually, this is important. But again, it has to be taken with the, big portion of care, knowing that actually only limited number of personal publications are here in this database. So it has to be interpreted in the context of all the database and not taken absolutely. A more detailed information on citation of specific sources can be obtained. In this case, it's by Professor Zinkevičius, his dialectology, and what kind of citations come from this specific source and where. This also can be visualized for a better understanding of the possible networks and possible impacts. And we can have, and we do have, ranking lists of sources that are frequently cited. From what you see here in the picture, they are mostly reference sources like encyclopedias, dictionaries, and a few of frequently cited authors. I don't know how to tell you about the reliability of that. Please take it as a pilot project and pilot attempts to deal with our inside of the country citation habits. Right now, when this attempt has been made, it would be very valuable to study actually and to do research on the citation data. Just because to know and to be able to answer to the questions whether we have networks and schools inside of the specific field of the Lithuanian studies that is somewhat more narrow than the social sciences and humanities in general. What are the links? The hypothesis could be that we actually try to cite people from the outside and less from the inside. But that has to be checked, and I invite you who are keen on, maybe there are hobbyists in bibliometrics, you are mostly welcome to do that. Search possibilities and the way that citation data are compiled is, it's handmade, as I say, it's a tedious job, and it's based on the lists of references. That's the main issue that I would like to take up and to continue. If we look at the motivation behind the citation analysis. As it started in the early 60s, it was already at that time taken as a possibility to have a tool for historians of particular scholarly topics to trace major networks of influence, collaboration, and dependence. Also, to examine differences and similarities in the citation pattern, both over time and among disciplines. And last but not least, the search for methods of assessment, evaluation, and ranking. Because of this last motivation, I think citation analysis could not be left just for bibliometricians alone. It's too important, it's too sensitive, and we have people's careers and their lives behind it. I'd like to cite, since we are talking about citations, John Swale's famous citation that I, from long ago, that I like very much. It's saying that citation analysis is something of a misnomer, something that has a name that does not really fit the essence of the phenomenon. In that it usually studies of bibliographic references rather than studies of citations embedded in continuous academic texts. Yes, this is what we do. We take lists and rely on them, which is actually not as it should be. That's why content citation analysis approach was initiated as a different studies of citation, studies of the citing behavior of researchers and scholars in their construction of academic texts, meaning that all the attention, or most of the attention, is paid how the text is compiled out of citations, or how citations behave in the text, what are their types and what are their functions. And this additional approach to citation analysis derives from very frequently expressed concern about the adequacy and reliability of simple and straightforward citation counting. It's too simple and the impact is too important for us that we could just count citations. There are lots of different examples of dubious cases of citations, and we know them all. I just give a few for the sake of illustration. Well, first of all, negative and critical citations. When we praise, when we support, it's okay, but what if we criticize? Do such citations have the same value as the supportive citations? Or what about the so-called named theories and discoveries? Nobody writes nowadays Einstein 1905. It's referred to as theory of relativity. How about that? Shall we count it as some kind of citation data having impact or not? Other similar cases are the so-called non-reference citations. Simply, well, Zipf's law, everybody knows this, and of course no references in their traditional sense of the word. Then citations differ in their lengths, and the well-known issue is self-citations. From the point of view of content citation approach, the aim would be to concentrate on the textual level, apply all kinds of discourse analysis and discoursal procedures in order to get viable categorization schemes and to supplement, I want to stress the word, to supplement purely quantitative reference counting, meaning content citation analysis does not aim at, so to say, overwhelming approach, but it should go hand in hand with a quantitative approach. And for that aim, types and functions of textual citations have to be analyzed. Again, I will not spend time in, overviewing numerous references in that field. Just for the sake of interpretation and exemplification, I'd like to tell and to draw your attention to the fact that we use terms in a different sense. Well, let's say bibliometricians talk about citations, but from the point of view of intertextuality or from the point of view of linguistic theory, well, they are different. We have proper textual citation in inverted commas. This is what we call citations. Otherwise, we have references. They can be paraphrased or freely rendered citations or just mere mentions, as well as allusions or indirect references where you will get no references at all, but everybody knows what's behind that. So actually, the types differ, and the value and the ability to trace them in the text is also different. So actually, this has to be taken into consideration. Even more than that, functions of citations. From the point, they are different functions, and different authors give different schemes, typologies, or if you take IT perspective, ontologies. Just to illustrate, there are types of citations or functions of citations from the point of view of connectedness, how they give impact and how they influence the work that cites them. So they can be conceptual or they can be operational. In the first case, they refer, they are referred to because they are important for building the concept or theory, or in the other case, technique or method. They can also be evolutionary or juxtapositional. If the researcher builds his research on the foundation of previous research, that would be evolutionary. If he also offers an alternative, kind of a little bit neglecting the previous approach, that would be juxtapositional. Again, different impact, different function. From the point of view of qualitative approach to citations, evaluative approach in the work that cites other texts, they can be, again, it's very well known, but I want simply to exemplify, organic or perfunctionary. They are meant for understanding or for explanation or for mere acknowledgement. That would be very interesting to measure and to see the disciplinary or national traditions, how we deal with these types of citations. My mere intuition from the reading numerous dissertations would be that very few are used as organic for understanding, but lots of them are meant for mere acknowledgement, just because what you get is 20 names and dates following them in the brackets. One can have slight doubts if the doctoral student would take the trouble to open the book, just because the title is revealing, and you can say that these authors also had their input into the analysis of the problem. And of course, confirmative and negational citations are very important from the point of view of the correctness of the findings proposed in the cited paper. And this is also, you see, one of the pioneering works of Moravsik and Murugesant. That was a content citation analysis approach. I'd like to add IT approach, specifically natural language processing techniques. Now, what's going nowadays, recently, and I really appreciate it, is the attempts to automatically recognize the functions of citations. For what purposes? First of all, for automatic detection and classification of citation functions. Well, citations, in this case I have in mind references also, are easily identifiable in the text. That's the easy part of the job. The difficult part is to state their functions. But again, we have cliches or collocations, frequently used words to report on the previous papers, and they can be easily recognized by a fast-learning computer. Then, of course, the findings can help to improve the impact factor calculation and help to develop more informative citation indexes. One of the tools, far from being perfect but already existing, helps to infer automatically the functions of citations. My idea and my suggestion would be to build such a tool on our Lithuanian database, Lituanistika, and to try to see how we cite, what is our citing culture, and how we deal with other texts. But I think also it would be very important to start a really interdisciplinary research and really interdisciplinary approach to citation analysis. Interdisciplinarity as a specific activity and highly evaluated activity nowadays is usually paid a lip service. People mostly talk about it, but they don't do much about it. And in this case, it could be done. Well, again, my suggestion would be that we should start with discourse analysis. Because there are lots of papers, especially for the discourse for academic purposes and academic English learning and teaching papers, lots and lots of ready-made papers with very detailed linguistic analysis on citations and on the nearest context of citations that could be taken and used by IT people for function detection. Then, or meanwhile, information analysis by bibliometricians should be done. The overall evaluation of how it goes is the topic of the sociology of science, and only then policy of research should come in and make informed decisions. Well, I suggest this order for the best result, but it can be reversed, no problem. I'd like to end my presentation again with one more citation, my favorite citation about citations that should leave us kind of on guard about the real functions of citations, about hidden agendas that are multiple functions of citations. Well, we have to cite. This is the must of a genre, of an academic discourse. And people do it. Many citations, as Ziman says, are done out of politeness, policy, and piety. No conceptual, no methodological, or any other issues. I'd like to thank people who did a very good overview of the previous attempts to evaluate social sciences and humanities. That's Aldis Gedutis and Liutauras Kraniauskas. I warmly recommend their book published last year. And of course, the leaders of Lituanistika and database team and my postdoctoral students and doctoral students who push me in in that direction to analyze citations as they are of paramount importance in our future careers. Thank you.